Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about 3 stories of people who went out on hikes to enjoy the scenery and the beauty of nature. Unfortunately, instead of the peaceful views they were expecting, each of them tragically fell from great heights. These are their stories. In December of 2006, cousins Elizabeth Brems and Paula Ramirez from Colombia were on their very first vacation to Hawaii. Elizabeth was 35 and working as a lawyer, while Paula, 29, had just begun her career as a businesswoman. Both were at the start of new chapters in their lives, and before diving fully into their careers, they wanted to take a break, relax, and explore somewhere beautiful. They chose the island of Kauai for its lush scenery, waterfalls, and peaceful atmosphere. Wanting to make the most of the trip, they looked through a guidebook that highlighted trails and scenic spots around the island. One particular entry stood out to them, Opaeka'a Falls. The guidebook described it as a hidden gem, an unmarked trail that led to a waterfall with amazing views. It also came with a warning though. The path was unofficial, unmaintained, and especially dangerous when wet or muddy. Despite the caution, Elizabeth and Paula decided to check it out. Opaeka'a Falls is located in Wailua River State Park and stands about 151 feet tall. Interestingly, the name Opaeka'a translates to rolling shrimp, named after the freshwater shrimp that once tumbled over the falls. The route to the falls isn't long, but it's tricky. There's no clear trail and requires hikers to descend a steep slope, often using tree branches and bushes for support. It's not part of the official hiking system, and without signs or proper guidance, it can be confusing and risky. As they follow the directions in the guidebook, the cousins eventually reach a fork in the path. On the left side had a warning sign that read, "Danger, keep out, hazardous conditions." The right side had no signs at all. Thinking the sign meant that the left side was closed and the other must be safer, they chose the path without the warning sign. It seemed worn down from previous use, with signs that others had taken it before. Their plan was to get to the base of the waterfall where the water flows into a pool. But the trail they followed didn't lead to the bottom. Instead, it brought them unknowingly to the top of the falls. The area near the edge was covered in thick foliage, and the drop-off wasn't visible through the dense growth. Tragically, as they moved forward, Elizabeth and Paula slipped and fell over the edge of the cliff, plunging nearly 300 feet to their death. What made this even more heartbreaking is that it wasn't even the first incident at that spot. Just 6 months earlier, a teenager had fallen from nearly the same location. Like Elizabeth and Paula, he had taken the unmarked path, unaware of the danger ahead due to the overgrown vegetation. Unlike the cousins, he survived due to a tree breaking his fall. After that earlier incident, some former park employees had raised concerns. They suggested closing the area off completely, but those warnings were mostly ignored. There was also a breakdown in communication between the Kauai Fire Department and the State Parks Division. The fire department, which responded to the teenager's fall, never reported the incident to state officials. As a result, no additional safety measures were taken and the misleading signage remained in place. That same misplaced sign became a critical point in the legal case that followed. Elizabeth and Paula's family filed a lawsuit against the state of Hawaii. 4 years later, a judge ruled in their favor. The court found the warning sign had been placed on the wrong trail and that no barriers or fencing had been put in place to prevent visitors from wandering into dangerous area. The ruling stated that if the sign had been placed correctly, the woman likely wouldn't have taken that route. The families were awarded $15 million in damages. After the ruling, both paths leading to the falls were permanently closed to the public. However, even today, some guidebooks still refer to that same unmarked trail as a secret path to the base of Opaeka'a Falls. Half Dome is one of the most iconic landmarks in Yosemite National Park. Rising 8,800 feet or about 2,600 meters above sea level, it towers roughly 1,300 feet or 400 meters from its base to the summit. The granite batholith is instantly recognizable because of its shape. One side is a sheer vertical cliff, while the other is a smooth, rounded slope, giving it the look of a dome sliced neatly in half. This unique formation, easily visible from Yosemite Valley, makes Half Dome one of the park's most popular hiking destinations. One person who had long admired the formation was 43-year-old Jennifer Bettles. Jennifer was a well-respected businesswoman known for her drive, success, and positive energy. Friends and colleagues describe her as someone who was passionate about life and lived as if each day mattered. Over her career, she had worked as an executive at several nonprofit organizations and eventually launched her own tech startup. Outside of work, she was equally accomplished. Jennifer was an experienced marathon runner and hiker who had visited Yosemite National Park multiple times before. On April 19, 2007, Jennifer decided to take on a new challenge, hiking to the top of Half Dome. She was hiking alone that day, something she was comfortable with and had done on previous trips. Her plan was to complete the hike in a single day, which typically takes between 12 and 16 hours round trip. The route to Half Dome starts along the Mist Trail and John Muir Trail, two of the most popular trails in the park. These sections are generally considered manageable for most hikers, though they can be tiring. However, the final ascent up Half Dome is much more demanding. The steep elevation gain, exposure, and sheer drop-offs make it a strenuous climb that is not recommended for beginners. But Jennifer was fit, experienced, and familiar with the park's trails. At that time, Yosemite National Park had not yet implemented its permit system for Half Dome. Before 2010, there was no limit on the number of hikers allowed on the cables each day, so on busy summer days, hundreds of people might attempt the climb at once. But on April 19, the trails were quiet. Jennifer encountered only 3 other hikers during her hike in Half Dome. Conditions that day were challenging. It had been raining before and during Jennifer's climb, and the slick granite made the trails and exposed rock face of Half Dome dangerous. Near the base of the dome, a sign warns hikers not to attempt the climb when it's raining or when there are dark clouds, but Jennifer chose to continue. There was another complication as well. Each year, from October to May, park staff removed the stanchions, the metal poles that hold the climbing cables in place, to prevent damage from heavy snow and ice. Without those stanchions, the cables simply lie flat against the rock, offering far less support. Hikers who attempt the ascent in these conditions must use their own strength and balance to pull themselves up the steep slope. As Jennifer climbed, she encountered 3 other hikers, who checked in with her to make sure she was okay. She assured them she was fine and continued upward. The climb was difficult and physically demanding, but Jennifer was determined. Eventually, she reached the summit where she took in the sweeping views that Half Dome is famous for. Around 3 p.m., Jennifer decided it was time to start heading down. The descent is often considered more dangerous than the climb. Even in dry conditions, going down the polished granite requires extreme caution. With the rock wet from the rain and without stanchions to provide balance, it was even more treacherous. As Jennifer worked her way down, she lost her footing on the slick surface. Unable to regain her balance, she slipped and fell hundreds of feet down the slope of Half Dome. The 3 hikers she had met earlier heard her screams and watched in shock as she disappeared from view. The hikers rushed down the trail as quickly as they could and found park rangers to alert them about what had happened. Unfortunately, the weather continued to complicate recovery efforts. Jennifer's body was not recovered until April 21st, 2 days after the fall. Tragically, Jennifer's accident was not an isolated event. 6 months prior, another hiker fell down and died in a similar incident. 2 more hikers fell from Half Dome in the years following her death. In response to the ongoing risk, Yosemite National Park introduced a permit system in 2010 to limit the number of people allowed on the cables each day to 300. The hope was that reducing congestion on the climb would lower the chances of accidents. Even with the restrictions, Half Dome remains a serious undertaking and accidents continue to happen. Norway is often described as one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Its towering mountains, dramatic fjords, and untouched wilderness make it a dream destination for nature lovers. Much of its stunning scenery is widely shared on social media, which has only added to its appeal. Among the many breathtaking locations in Norway, one place has captured more attention than most: Trolltunga. Trolltunga, which translates to Troll's Tongue, is a striking rock formation that juts out from a mountain like a giant stone tongue. Once a quiet and little-known viewpoint, Trolltunga has become one of the most visited attractions in Norway thanks to its growing presence online. Where it used to draw only around 800 visitors a year, it now welcomes more than 80,000. Travelers from around the world make the long journey just to stand on the edge of the rock and capture the famous photograph overlooking the spectacular views. Getting to Trolltunga isn't easy. The round-trip hike is roughly 27 kilometers or about 17 miles, with a total elevation gain of 3,500 feet, or 1,100 meters. For most hikers, it takes 10 to 12 hours to complete. The hike itself is stunning, with sweeping views of rugged peaks and valleys. But the biggest reward comes at the very top, when you're greeted by the sight of Ringedalsvatnet shimmering 700 meters below. It was this view that inspired 24-year-old Christy Kafkaludis to take on the challenge. Christy, an exchange student from Australia, was studying at the University of Bergen in Norway at the time. On September 5, 2015, she joined a group of about 30 other students from the university on a hiking trip to Trolltunga, about 160 kilometers or 100 miles from Bergen. The group hiked the long trail together, enjoying the scenery along the way. By the time they arrived at Trolltunga, the rock formation was crowded with other hikers. It's common for visitors to wait in line for a chance to step out onto the tongue for a photo, and Christy and her two friends patiently waited their turn. Trolltunga is beautiful, but it has no safety measures in place. There are no barriers or rails near the edge, and it's up to the hikers to watch their step and use caution. On busy days, it can be difficult to navigate around other people, and hikers must take their time to avoid accidents. When it was finally their turn, Christy and her friends stepped out onto the rock formation to take photos. Her friends went first, standing at the very edge for their picture, before stepping back to let Christy have her turn. Christy posed about 2 meters from the edge, smiling for the camera with the breathtaking view behind her. After her picture was taken, the group began walking back from the rock. Christy's friends went ahead and she followed close behind. At the same time, other hikers were still waiting to get their own photos, so she tried to make room for them by stepping carefully to the side. This time, however, she was walking even closer to the edge. As Christy tried to pass by, she stepped on a loose rock. In an instant, she lost her balance and slipped. Two people who were nearby saw the entire thing happen. It was so sudden that Christy didn't even have time to yell for help. The only scream that echoed across Trolltunga that day was from one of her friends, realizing what had just happened. Christy fell approximately 900 feet or 270 meters from the edge. The remote location made the situation even more difficult. There was no cell phone coverage at the site, so one of the hikers had to use a GPS device to alert emergency crews. Because Trolltunga is so isolated, it took rescuers 7 hours to reach the area and recover Christy's body. As of today, Christy Kafkaludis remains the only fatality in Trolltunga. The rock formation continues to attract tens of thousands of visitors each year, all eager to capture the same iconic photograph. If you guys made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you. Have a good, wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.